right, well, we don't even have to have a pledge of allegiance, but I think because we have a new member, we'll go ahead and do it. Jason, could you like to lead us, please?
Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay. Can the clerk call the roll?
And forgive me, your last name is pronounced Scudder?
Scudder, yeah.
Scudder. Scudder.
Here.
Atwood is excused. Smith. Jaffa.
Here.
Paquette.
Here.
Wolkers is excused. And Miller. Here. Okay, you do have a quorum.
All right. So, we, once a year, I don't know if you know exactly what's going on with this particular meeting, but once a year, we typically set our schedule, our meeting schedule. You have it right there. And if you notice, the work sessions are mostly blank. That's not the way it's always been. So today's meeting is intended to try to fill in some suggested topics for those work sessions. And I think the range of activities are broad because our mandate through the code is broad. But there are some obvious things that we deal with, obviously, that are regular in the business of the port activities and some of the other, both harbors and some of the other specific things that we deal with. But in the past, we have had a broad range of topics. This is a work session, a work packet from 2018, a PACAB work session. And this is, all the backup information, but on this were 4 items. They were energy alternative items, actually 5 items, and the South Harbor launch ramp discussion. So I don't know if you've had a chance to get immersed in that, but we have a lot of things that we can look at. My hope is that from this meeting, we'll come up with maybe a half a dozen ideas that we present to the council. And I hope we can do that at the November 13th meeting. We have another meeting, I just went through with Karen upstairs, we have another meeting scheduled for the 7th. First, sorry, the 1st. But from that meeting, we could possibly bring a resolution on these topics that we talk about today.
Right, yeah, and that's how it would have to work, and then it would go to council on their November,
If we
the
took
first
it,
November meeting.
if we took it to council and spoke of those topics, even just for discussion, they could take it up and assign topics. But it would be cleaner, correct? Chair Paquette, or Vice Chair Paquette is correct. That's the cleanest administrative Robert Rules of Order. This is a work session, Bob, so we'll get the audience to participate in any of these things.
I hear a little late, so
No, you didn't.
You haven't missed anything.
Yeah, no, just my long-winded introduction. One of the things, I'll just start, the sort of thing that I would like to see on the agenda is alternative energy sources of energy. And it goes back to the 2018 PACAB discussion. Then we looked at Lowell Creek Hydro, Crescent Lake Hydro, and 4th of July Hydro. Now, there are reasons to maybe stay away from some of those, but the concept is still there. So the way I would imagine this discussion going is I'm putting it out for discussion, and I would say why I think any of those things are good or bad. Does that make sense? So I do not, and I'll just as an aside, I do not want to jump into a topic prematurely that the city is already considering or that's off the table. One of those is the 4th of July Hydro Creek, which Chugach Electric is currently studying. It's actually Godwin Creek, but it's nonetheless a tributary to 4th of July Creek. And they are progressing on that. And the process for hydro is you identify a hydroelectric source. You do some initial study. You can get as far as a cost analysis, which requires some money. And eventually you move to a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, a FERC application. They then would study that resource and your application and issue a permit. That doesn't pay for it, but you're developing all those things together. To start with, 4th of July is off the table. Lowell Creek, to me, is still a very viable thing, but we need to be very politically aware of, in my opinion, not interfering with what the Corps of Engineers has planned there. There are some people who have spoke to City Council about jumping right in with Lowell Canyon, but the most critical thing is to get a new tunnel in Lowell Creek, Lowell Canyon. That's the most critical thing. So if we complicate that, the Corps has already got a complicated project. It could interfere with that. But yeah, Norm.
So I'll be going to Denver next week to talk with the Corps of Engineers on the
tunnel.
The tunnel. Doug and I are heading that way, so.
And they're aware that there's a hydro potential.
Correct, but it's not in the tunnel part of the.
It's not, and the problem with Lowell Creek is that it's a creek that moves so much gravel that keeping the gravel out of the turbines, which is mechanical equipment, is critical. And if you run gravel through there, you're destroying your opportunity. However, both Bob Linville and myself have talked about projects. Run of the creek is what that's called. It's not an impoundment, it's not a dam, but there are new and improved and rock trap opportunities that are available. I think the discussion would be what kind of design would be feasible and when to enter that in. Wait till the Corps is done in, what, 2030 or 35, or when?
They have to be done with 2028, the other one ends, but they're gonna start. Cause I went last week with the city manager to Anchorage, talking to Corps. They're gonna start scrubbing next year and then building the bridge to get over there to work, so. 25, yeah, must be 28, 29.
For getting the tunnel done?
We know more next week, but.
Yeah, okay. Well, see, that's not that far down the road, well, 7 years, but it's still not that far down the road to be thinking about what could happen with whatever's left. When they're gonna dump water into the bay. So I would like to have some people talk about alternative hydro concepts and get that on the table and get that into the city record. And that's not to pursue a particular topic, but the other one on this list, Crescent Lake, I can tell you that there were 4 projects that were studied in the 1950s by the U.S. Corps of Engineers. And it was Grant Lake, Ptarmigan Lake, Cooper Lake, Carter Lake, and I think Crescent Lake. Carter Lake and Crescent Lake are, pardon me?
Carter Lake and Crescent Lake are the same.
Well, they are and they are. The outfall of Crescent Lake runs north to Cooper Landing. The outfall of Carter Lake runs.
It just wouldn't make sense to go, they want to go down the steep hill.
As I remember though, Bob, I think they considered 4 lakes, and I think they considered those separately. The problem with those lakes was the geology, the ground was too porous, and they were talking at that time about dams and raising lake elevation, which creates more hydrostatic pressure, and if the rock is porous, it won't hold the water. So that was before the large growth of run-of-the-creek type of hydro projects. And run-of-the-creek also has the benefit of not having as huge an impact on fish and things like that. So anyway, as a general topic, looking at hydro sources, and that's not the end of them. There are hydro sources up and down this bay. They're not cheap, and transmission at $1 million a mile, at least, is a problem for where you put them in. But high lakes that drain are energy sources. So that's something that I would like to get in front of council and see if they bite. Have you acted enough? Any other ideas? And this is just essentially to give council, you know, a pick list.
Right, right, no,
Did I send you one on title? The title, they had to make those title grids, kind of getting more and more advanced.
right. I really think we need to be looking at that too.
So power generation
By title.
consideration, yeah.
Yeah.
Title is real. They're using it in Denmark. They've got these things that do this. It's really interesting. They also have things that spin. The Rothschilds looked at one in Turnagain Arm years ago, and it was laughed at. I think it was just an excuse for a fishing trip. But the energy is there.
Yeah, the energy's there.
So water source power generation, I think is what we're talking about.
Okay, not alternative energy.
Not,
Hydro energy.
yeah, hydro energy.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd say hydro energy, Linda.
so explore hydro energy options.
Yes. And that would include run of the creek, wave of generated power, at least. There are others. There's the ion conversion where they put catalytic things down in the water and generate power because of, like a battery. But I don't know anywhere that's been proven efficient. Now, our mandate talks about alternative energy, and there's a local resident spoke recently about wind power, but I think all of us have seen the windmill at Avtech sit idle so often that it's hard to consider.
But I don't know if it's on break. It's
That's
on
just a
break.
training, it's just a training tool for them.
Right,
That's what?
Just a training tool.
yeah, they're not using it.
Yeah.
It's locked up, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
not-
it's-
it's
Yeah,
not.
it's on
Oh, so
break.
it's not an example of
it's-
what's
no.
actually,
Yeah.
It's broken right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so at least an exploration of wind power would be consistent with our thinking.
Yeah, well, Ben talked about it, and he didn't really care for wind energy. It's not, he even said it at the meeting, so.
Yeah, there's national
Yeah.
figures that don't like it either.
Yeah.
When I drive through eastern Washington or even the Dakotas, it's amazing. We just went through North Dakota, this huge gas and oil producing, they got wind power all over the place. It does work. It does work. As a matter of fact, I think Europe put in, or the European Union put in more wind and solar driven or generated power last year than any other source of power.
It's all over Oregon too, Eastern Oregon.
Well, yeah, there's political reasons to move towards that sort of thing. Okay, so what else we got?
Well, I have kind of a little list I've been building.
Good.
I'm curious if, and I'll say this up front, it's not my intention to step on anybody's toes. If this is already like in somebody's sandbox and it's theirs and they don't want anybody messing with it, just ignore me. But I did have 2 council members talk to me about the strategic plan and wondering whether PACAB could start or take a stab at it, or at least give input on it. And I don't know, where does that stand right now? Do you know, Jason?
So we started kind of looking at it last year a little bit, just because our strategic plan had not been updated since, I believe, like the late 90s.
1999.
Yeah, and so, but kind of the strategic plan is actually kind of a working document that comes out of your comprehensive plan. For like, this is with the way, the comprehensive plan is like, this is our community values and the way we want our community to look. And the strategic plan is like the steps on how we get there. And so we are kind of working on updating a lot of our, the sub-plans underneath the comprehensive plan. Like our cemetery master plan has not been updated since 1996, and we're in the process of going through that right now. We did a major overhaul over the last 2 years of our muni land plan, which is kind of another plan that sits underneath the comprehensive plan. I know Parks and Rec are going to be redoing their plan, which is another one that hasn't been updated for a number of years. And then previously, like the comprehensive plan, it normally would go in 10-year kind of increments. Like they would call it like the 20, go from like 2020 to 2030.
That's the one we're working on right now.
Yeah, but the interesting kind of thing about that is that was adopted in 2017. And so, like the way the world works these days, especially given the pandemic, but just in general how technology works and how our problems change so quickly, we're going to be doing, starting this next year, we're going to be digging into the comprehensive plan and start working on doing mid-cycle adjustments. Normally when you do like a comprehensive plan, we had like a big group come in. I know the borough kind of helped pay for that.
They used a consultant even on the last one.
Yeah, they did all that work, and they had the thing down at the library. You could go in and talk to people, and they had people write down their values and that. But we feel like it's pretty easy to do like an internal mid-cycle adjustment that way, and so that's what it's actually planned. It comes out of community development, but they're going to be working, having community input, something similar like that over the next year, and that way we can kind of get a mid-cycle adjustment for that plan.
Would it make sense for us to have a work session to just give our input and have an additional place where the public could come and?
Yeah, I think that we should probably get a kickoff going and kind of, the document right now, we're looking at doing it in 3 steps. Is one, that the document has a lot of like things that are just invalid in it. Like one of the ones that comes to mind that said like, help Spring Creek do their expansion. Spring Creek is not going to do another expansion. So like that kind of stuff needs to be just taken right out of the document. The other piece is that's in those documents is like, what have we accomplished since the last revision? And so we need to take kind of the things that were maybe plans in there that have been accomplished and move those to kind of the accomplishments. And then the next piece would be to like, hey, what about our community do we need to revise as far as our values or the direction that we're going and that type of thing. And so I do think at the PACAB level, and it might be good to do like a work session with planning and zoning on that, where you start looking at get everyone familiar with the document, because it's 2 volumes. One is kind of the actual what the plan is, and then that's volume 1, and then volume 2 is kind of all the research and the background and the narrative that went into building that document. And so I think one, it'd just be a good thing for everyone to get familiar with the document. And then from that, I think that if you guys are involved in that process, it would also be good then to make recommendations on the strategic plan on what are some good steps to get there. So
Could you sort of compare strategic plan and comprehensive plan?
Yeah, so the comprehensive plan gives, it tells what the community values. It says like we value like our small town feel. We value that we're a working harbor community. We value our schools. We value, it gives values. And then it does give some kind of like rough ideas on where we want to go with those things. Like we want to make sure we're always helping our schools to do whatever, or we're working to provide equitable housing for different types of income levels. It says those types of things. So it kind of says those really broad what we want to do with that, but then it actually does not give like action steps.
So strategic would be an implementation.
Yes, yeah. Strategic plan is kind of say, okay, how are we going to get there in the step, in the steps.
I can send you a comprehensive plan so you can look through it and kind of get an idea of where.
Yeah.
So are both of those then brought before council for approval separately? Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
To answer your question, I do think it might be a good thing to have like a work session with planning and zoning, and to just talk about the document, look through it, because there's a lot in the document, and to look through it, and just to begin that mid-cycle adjustment to that, because it does need updating. And I think the pandemic actually changed a lot of things, and it's brought a lot of issues to light that need to be probably looked at, so.
And I recall feedback from the community that they weren't really happy with that comprehensive plan after it came out.
In 99?
No, the one
Yeah.
that, the 20,
Yeah.
the
I didn't hear
2020 to
nothing
2030.
I thought we had plenty of community input, and I think nobody said anything at the meeting when the council approved it.
No, I know, but then after living with it for a while,
Yeah, that's all.
you know.
It's a working
it-
document too. so-
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then just maybe for Bruce's, but as I recall, the strategic plan was one sheet of paper. No?
No,
The
it
one from
wasn't.
99?
No, it is like, it was pages thick and it had like
Maybe that was
categories.
just a summary page then of
I'll
each
forward
of
both
the.
documents to Chris, and Chris
Yeah.
can send it
Yeah,
off to you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm involved with 2 organizations now that are doing strategic plans, and it's a long-winded consultant and
Yeah.
very elaborate document. And neither one of those organizations do comprehensive plans.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Lynn, I know you got more, but anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so then my next question, what about the harbor master relocation, office relocation? Is there anything we need to be holding a work session about there? Design, steps,
So steps, so we were just talking about it yesterday. We need to move the electric out of that line
Right.
of breakwater. Once that's moved, then we can go and have it, the uplands replatted for buildings and see what, where we can put it. Have an idea where we can put it. It's down just next to the bathrooms, just
right, right.
off to the west a little bit, but until we get the electric moved, I mean, it's gonna go on the upland someplace, but near the harbor, so you can actually see the water.
Right,
Yeah, so something like that. So it's just getting the electric moved, and we are currently working on that to get the electric moved, so we can get that upland developed.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the topic, though.
Right.
Upland development.
Yeah,
And that's really what we could review,
Right.
and we have a little bit in
We
the
did-
past.
we did.
And we came to that logjam, or blockade.
Right, we came to the height limit, that was the big one.
Yeah.
We had a height limit that that, and then, so now it's just all about platting those little pieces of property up there.
And you guys could get input on kind of some of that design and input on like replatting the boardwalk, like how big do you want those spaces along
Right,
there?
right.
Parks and Rec is also in that parking discussion, they want to pave.
I know,
pave it,
but
and so I
don't we
think.
have to get this stuff done before they go paving?
And it's, yeah,
Yeah, we talked about not paving that north side of the
Right.
road right now.
Right.
Until
we
that's
get things
done.
moved, But that can,
Well, it sounds like a couple agencies need to get together.
yeah, and so, but I do think like developing that plan further, so so maybe it's ready to go to the next step when council wants to go there
You
as
need a
far as.
vision.
Yeah, and you need to like have it on, like, this is what it could look like, and so I do think that
Is
that
it
would
gonna
be.
be Homer beachfront, or is it gonna be something else?
Right.
it's pretty much gonna be like the rest of the harbor with all those buildings. I think we have an uplands development plan. It's not very big, that's one we worked on, God, Bob, was it 5, 10 years ago? So-
Where's the uplands? When you talk
It's-
about uplands, what are you
It's
talking
right
about
in front of the
specifically?
condos, up by the Mariners Memorial. That's uplands.
It's between Salt,
Look on the map, we're just south of the harbor.
yeah,
That's what I
between
thought.
Saltwater Safari and the
Where
condo.
the Mariners Memorial is.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept to keep them in the lights.
Okay, so uplands development would be another work session topic. This would be a question for Jason. Does the city want to develop a policy for grant pass-throughs? And if so, would you like PACAB to help with that? To develop that policy?
As far as what kind of grants specifically?
Well, like what, the historic grant, or whatever that grant was that Casa Grande was talking about, and whether, regardless of that grant, the issue came up of being approached by someone in the city needing assistance with a grant pass-through, and what I've heard is there is no policy in place. And so I'm just throwing it out there. Policy takes time, and if it's not already on somebody's plate, maybe we have the time to help.
Yeah, and I don't think, like, most of our, it's kind of a new one for us because we've never been approached by, like, the city to
Right.
act as to hold the baton or as
Right.
this mediator, and so it hasn't really happened before. I think you can always ask council if that's something they want you to work on, but, it's just, from the city's perspective, like, we process all of our own grants and we do all that kind of thing, and so that one would be, maybe after the meeting on the 13th, that's something you could discuss with them.
This was in the city bulletin board today. I just pulled it out. Application for heating assistance, state of Alaska. This is kind of an individual grant application. I think as long as there wasn't a city policy that made it harder for this kind of person, I think there are grants, and I don't know if this is what you're talking about, Linda, but this sort of thing, as long as there's not an obstacle in city regulation or code, people get their own grants. We just got one for that solar project. It wasn't a grant, it was actually, I shouldn't say we got it. We could have applied for it. There's no city obstruction to that. But in fact, the city building department approval of our design would have helped with that. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Linda.
What I'm actually, the bottom line of what I'm talking about is that typically with governments, when they do pass-throughs for other agencies, they charge an administrative fee. So, like, Low Point Community Council could apply for a grant, but they can't get the grant. It can't be given directly to them. It has to go through either a government agency or a correct kind of not-for-profit. And so the borough typically takes the grant for them, but the borough charges an administrative fee. It's not free. And that's the real key, right? If you're going to do it, develop a policy where you're being compensated for the time and the effort that you're making handling the funds.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to like a policy type decision, so I think that would be something that I don't want to answer for council in that regard, but it wouldn't hurt to ask council.
Okay, well, you're not telling me that somebody's already on it, and, so, okay. I mean, I think if everyone is okay with it, we could put it on the list for a possibility.
A grant pass-through affecting the city of Seward.
So the grant that she's talking about just helps out a business.
An individual
It
business.
doesn't help out the city of Seward.
Right. It's a it's a little tricky because it's a historic building, and so the city would be inclined to want to keep that historic building.
I'd like to know more about it.
And I do think you mentioned two different specific examples there that are different. Like if the Lowell Point community, or like let's say their fire department or something like that. I mean, obviously they're out of city limits, but I do think like I see those are two different types of entities.
Right.
Like one is a publicly beneficial entity, and I mean, if the city wanted to do a pass through on something like that, like I could see that being a policy that would be different than like an individual business applying for one type of thing.
Right,
But
and the
I mean,
administrative fees might be different. So you might charge 3% for one, and you might charge 15 for the other.
Right.
Simply because one is not benefiting the public.
Right.
Right.
So the discussion would be whether there would be a charge.
Or just to develop the policy.
Develop the policy.
Develop the policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got one.
Okay.
Housing. We talked about this at PACAB a couple of years ago. The history is relatively simple. It came up actually because at that time the assistant city manager came to me and said, I'd like you guys to take it up. And I was an interim chair. The history there was we had a short board. I didn't feel that I wanted to take the chair without having a full board. So I actually got a resolution passed that I was only a 6-month chair. And we re-elected a new chair, and at that time, that chair had no passion for pursuing the discussion of housing. That doesn't mean that the problem has changed or that the city and everybody else hasn't spent a lot of time on it, but it's still a problem in this town. And I don't know that there's what's the word, panacea or an immediate cure, but it's not going to cure itself. So I would like to ask council if they would like us to get back into housing. The housing issue, just as a point of reference, this was from February 2022. There's 3 pages of people and topics that we were going to meet. I had a list of people who had pledged their time to come and talk to us. I think somewhat unfairly, the 2 local real estate people were brought in and spoke, and I think they were somewhat beat up in the press over what they had said, and I don't think that was fair, because what they brought was an opinion about what the status was. It wasn't a pronouncement or anything like that, but they did do a service to the community. There are a lot of other people and stakeholders in this. The hospital, the fish house, etc., the school. At that time, if you remember, I think it came into us about the school teacher was living in a camper trailer. So I would like to get housing back on our sites, and I'd be happy to have any input or help with that if we can get it on the table.
What's the lodging, there's a lodging tax in Seward, isn't there, for like nightly lodging?
Yeah, bed tax, yeah.
Bed tax.
How much is it?
4%.
4%?
Yeah, it's one of the lowest in the state.
Yeah.
You know, Anchorage has like 12%. So,
And
yeah,
then-
they use that to pay like in Anchorage that pays for the Denida Center. On ours, the original intent was like half to go, if you go look at the original legislation for that, like half was supposed to go to the chamber, and then the other half was supposed to go to like help pay for like infrastructure improvements because of having all these people in town. So that was the original kind of intent.
And then just the future, the borough's looking at doing a borough-wide bed tax.
Yeah, what's the status of that?
It's starting in Sedan now, area, they're working on it. I imagine it'll come up soon.
Yeah. Well, it's just a matter of time. I wonder if we want it to say housing/employee retention, because that was, when we actually took it up, they called it employee retention, because it wasn't just...
Right, it puts a flavor to it.
Yeah.
I think it's not just employee retention, though, it's attracting new employees as well. I mean,
Yeah.
people looking at the town
Yeah,
and looking at a job that would pay for a certain level of housing, and it's not available.
right, yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's not just about housing, it's about affordable housing, right?
Well, it's both.
Right.
And when you break it down into, what's affordable for a clerk at the store, as opposed to a scientist at the Sea Life Center, it's relative, but there have been some moves in the city, along with private developers, to build single-family homes. Those are more of your upper end type homes, but the 12 plexes, 16 plexes, the multiplexes, duplexes, all those need a strong consideration. And frankly, the bank was one of the sources that I talked to about coming in and giving some presentation, because money's always there if there's a good business plan. I shouldn't say always, but often there.
There's opportunities.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is as you said, single-family dwellings, and as much as we need employee housing in this community, which we do, we need year-round housing as well. We need families to be able to come in and to bring in, not only to keep employees here, but to keep our services here, which is one of the reasons that I asked to join this board, is to look at ways that we can work together as entities between the City of Seward, the Chamber of Commerce, and PACAB to bring some stability and keep those essential services, hardware stores, hair salons, title companies, plumbing stores, building supplies.
Bowling alleys.
Bowling alleys, this place, all of that we're losing, and it's hard, especially on the little guy,
Right.
Well, welcome aboard. I think if we leave it just as housing, Linda, frankly, I think it's
That's
broad
enough?
enough.
No.
And, when we present to council, this will come back to our November 1st meeting. We'll have, I think, the opportunity to improve the language if we need to. Was that right, Jason? Can we bring this as a resolution to our November 1st meeting? This is the 25th, so notice is okay? Okay. So the housing, I think, is a
Housing,
critical
okay.
thing. You mentioned something else, in the Chamber of Commerce, the groups of Seward that participate and improve our life, there are many of them. I think the city council provides an opportunity for all those groups to speak through a common voice. And it doesn't always happen. So if there was some way that we could, and council, chamber has come when, and Jason was the executive director, and Cindy, and have always come and worked with this board. This is a non-binding board, advisory board, but that gives us a great opportunity to heard without being too binding on anybody. So I would like to see more opportunity for different groups to come to this board. And that would either be through work sessions or individual invitations. And I'd like the council to tell us if we're on the right track in that regard. And that would be what, soliciting community groups' opinion on critical topics. And that goes with our, in our provision under code, we talk about the quality of life in Seward. And that is all those things you mentioned, the hairdresser and the bowling alley. And my wife wants to see a movie theater. She wants to donate a piece of land to somebody who wants to build a movie theater. I don't know. But, you know, this is
It's a need. My husband's a contractor. He has to go to Kenai to get a piece of lumber to.
I saw some coming in today, or somebody's bringing them in. All those things, I think, so a clearinghouse of ideas for community improvement. I think that would work. Wouldn't it, a clearinghouse? That's broad enough and shouldn't pinch anybody's toes. Okay, Linda, you got some more?
Jason, you had one, didn't you? Didn't you have one about paving or prioritizing paving, or what was that?
Yeah, I was just throwing stuff out there as far as improvements, because we do have like monies like sidewalks are supposed to be improved or extended. Paving, you know, like I know that like the paving in our industrial area is something that we'd like to see happen. But I do think just if you're looking at paving is something that affects tourism, it affects commerce, it affects businesses, paving and good sidewalks. And so I think even just visiting that and understanding like where our priorities are, what our problem spots are, things that need to be redone sooner than later, things that we can extend. You know, I know recently at it was planning and zoning within the last few months, but they even talked about kind of a long-term goal of down in the industrial area. Like you look at a lot of industrial, like just down along Lear, down there along that parallels the highway. How different that would look if we had a plan that would actually put like pave that, put curbs, parking spaces that were pulled out there, put green space in there with trees. You know, you have some things that would just take an industrial area. It's always going to be industrial area, and we appreciate it too, but you could dress that up.
Right, doesn't have to be ugly.
It doesn't have to be ugly, and it doesn't have to be this dust bowl type of thing, but something like that would even helping develop maybe like a long-term plan for the industrial area to make it more like drivable, walkable. No one likes to drive down Alameda, and it's hard for the boat lift guys. I see them navigating like potholes with the boat lift and stuff like that, and so I think looking at ways of just having a plan for replacement and improvement of all areas in the city. I think
And
that's.
prioritizing it.
And prioritizing
Using us
it,
to
right.
prioritize
Right.
which we should do first.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think down, especially in the industrial area, if you had that more walkable and just prettier as people, as it comes into town, it serves dual purpose. It makes the industrial area better to work in, and it makes it not such, maybe just dress it up a little bit for people coming into town.
Right.
Yeah.
So we prioritize vehicle and pedestrian access to areas.
Improvements, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Jason, do you
So
know
clerk
if there's?
gonna be able to put this into some sort of a clear form for us, or do you want us individually to send you ideas on how some of these wordings would be?
I mean, I'm taking notes on your list of topics.
He's good.
But you're always welcome to email me.
Yeah, okay. Well, no, you do it pretty nice, Chris, with the way you present things.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that gives us 7 things so far.
Yeah.
Now, I don't expect council to select all of these, so,
Yeah, I think we need more than,
you need more?
I think so.
Okay, what else you got?
What about a work session to follow up on the discussion about the tsunami sirens and the plans for response and all of that? I mean, we wouldn't want to do that soon because we just had that, but didn't we say at the end of that there was some follow-up that we could do?
I think the boroughs, when they finish doing all their upgrades and stuff, are gonna come out with something.
Yeah.
And so she's gonna send out the little flashcards that she has and the other stuff as soon as they're done with all the municipalities. So, I mean, you can throw it on there and just put it later on in there.
Right, and specify for when the borough's done with their upgrades.
And then they can do another presentation to us.
There you go, review final upgrades from the borough, something like that.
Well, I think it's a worthwhile topic, but I don't think that's what we'd want to schedule a work session around. Particularly because it's work in progress.
No, but when it's done, that's what Norm's
Well, then
saying.
why would we want a placeholder? Why would we need a placeholder for it? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we want a placeholder for
Well, because, well,
The plan's already gonna be done, I think, what Bruce is saying.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
Do we need anything, should we be doing anything about the airport? Where's the airport? What's going on with the airport?
I don't know, we were kind of waiting to hear back from
Yeah, we'll hear back from the state.
the state.
So,
Because they approved their preliminary replat, which allows them to start kind of like looking at looking at funding from the FAA and start having conversations and taking next steps. And so we're just kind of waiting to hear back from them, so.
that
Yeah.
is something we monitor. when it
yeah, and you
comes
can
up.
always make, at a meeting, you say, hey,
Right.
the airport's coming up, maybe we should move
Yeah.
a work session, and bring that one into place of it.
We could do that, or if we have one of these topics in a work session, we can put 2 topics in a work session.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or a regular meeting, either one.
The only other thing I have is a unified beautification approach. Does the Downtown Business Association still exist?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of either.
Yeah, so, over the years, what I've watched, and I know COVID had something to do with it, but it used to be really pretty here in the summer everywhere you went, outside the industrial area. But there were flowers everywhere, between the harbor and downtown. Downtown had flowers on every signpost or on light fixture, and that's, I don't know if it's budget, I don't know if it's because the Downtown Merchant Association doesn't meet I don't know what's happened, but it seems to me that it would be really nice if,
Well, the one year they didn't hire a gardener,
all right,
and then they hired a gardener, they couldn't find one this year, but then somebody jumped up and volunteered. So, like you said, COVID messed up a lot of stuff.
yeah.
And that garden was just to maintain a lot of those like pocket parks and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's just staffing continues to be an issue, and
We
you
still
can't.
have flower baskets on the lamp post, don't we?
Only a few, nothing like it used to be.
Well, we're all getting older. I know that our staff does our building and our adjacent lot, but there's been a lot of, I mean, Dorothy is 93?
Something, yeah.
So, I mean, I can't really expect her to get out. But I think that's probably a city, the vision of a city, there's something to it, Linda. I'm not quite sure that the PACAB would be able to do it. Council, or chamber probably would have a better opportunity to do it. But, you know, we can talk to Samantha. She should be here at our next meeting. And incidentally, we do have a new chamber director.
As
I'm
well,
not sure
yes.
his last
Yeah.
name, but.
Alan.
Samantha
that's
Allen.
right. So, you know, that would be something to bring up with her. And it's like I told Chamber, our company's not a member of Chamber, but we're in downtown business
Right,
group.
right.
And I think we could probably reinvigorate some of that. So the council members, previous and current, are on that group, and would be in that group.
I don't know if I need to mention this or not, but I'm currently the president of the Chamber of Commerce, so I can definitely
Oh.
bring some of this up to Sam during
Yeah, you should.
the next meeting. I know it's been discussed at chamber board meetings as far as what role the chamber plays in PACAB, and that's a part of my joining this, is to kind of understand more of how, again, we can all work together to.
Well, I can
meet
answer
all
that
those
in a
goals.
nutshell, because we've been through this a few times. The title is Port and Commerce Advisory Board. There was a time where it was considered only port issues, but clearly commerce is a very broad term. And to me, I participate in this because I'm not a fisherman. I don't have a boat. I love the harbor. I do like to fish, but I like the commerce in Seward. And the people who formed PACAB were people like Willard Dunham and Darrell Schaefer-Meyer, who weren't harbor necessarily, they were commerce. So there's a big component with the Chamber of Commerce and all of our other businesses. You know, I think you bring a very valuable vision for us on PACAB. Again, we're an advisory board, so we don't make any action. Okay, Linda?
I don't have anything else.
Oh, okay. And I do like the idea of beautification, if you call it that, but, you know, we have the idea Jason brought up of improvements. And that includes, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
pocket parks or shrubbery or things like that. There's ways to do it. You know, when they did the fence along the boat harbor, you know, they put in a decorative fence. It wasn't just a junky looking thing. Well, I think that gives us 7 topics to bring to council. That's in addition to the other things that are on our normal workload. And to remember, anything that really comes up that's critical, we can add to a work session. Yeah.
So the two things we got right now, of course, these 7 items, and also we're bringing back for you guys to approve the harbor plan and then we want to talk to you about, so on the beach you have. on the
Norm,
list-
just a minute. For those of you that remember, we left that harbor plan for review, and it's coming back.
Right, we worked through it, and then it's coming back for you guys to approve what we did.
Right.
And then once you guys approve it, then I bring that before council to
Right.
approve it. It's a 5-year thing that council has to approve it.
Right.
And also on that meeting, you have a capital improvement plan, but we just, we did that a while ago, and I don't think we need to probably deal with that right now.
Capital improvement plan?
That was what you had scheduled for that meeting also, but, because the-
Is that for?
because the book's already being made.
But like just.
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah,
right.
so we had these, like, we're in the process, like, council already approved the things that are gonna be going in this book. We're about ready to have it printed for the 2024.
So we need to take that item and move it into next year,
Someplace next year.
September?
Yeah,
Is that the right timing?
yeah, probably like August or September when you guys
Yeah, well,
come
see,
back.
we don't
And
meet in
then-
August, so the
yeah.
first meeting in September.
Yeah,
That's
and-
gotta
and-
come back.
Yeah, and that-
Set next year's
yeah,
calendar
and that way you guys can.
later. It December.
Yeah,
What is
Let's
that book?
remember that.
yeah.
What month was that scheduled for? That you're talking
Yeah, but
about?
that was for this month, the meeting come up November 1st.
Do we have a topic for this meeting?
Oh, you're talking about when this one right here, when it come up before council? Or are you talking about our meeting?
Well, no, I'm trying to follow through on Norm's
So that's,
suggestion about dropping
so the
this
capital
off.
improvement plan, that's, we get the plan, go to
Yeah, we don't
council,
need
and
to
the
talk
council
about it.
puts it, we put it in this book. So we give it to folks when we go to DC or whoever, you know,
Right,
yeah, so that's what, we've already did it,
we did it last meeting.
June
Or whenever.
before, I think, but
Yeah.
yeah. And
So
council-
if we take that out of the November 1st meeting,
Just do the
You
harbor
got two-
plan.
you got two items, I think.
Harbor
we
plan.
have 2 items?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got
And
the
then-
harbor plan, and then, of course, the, for 7 items here that you want council to.
Okay.
And could I, Mr.
Yeah.
Clerk, when we're looking at prioritizing, getting input from council to prioritize these work session items, do you think that that would be better to have as a discussion item?
That's what I was thinking, discussion item, and they could give direction as to which ones they wanted.
Right.
Or what order they wanted them in.
Yeah, and so I think if we introduce that as a discussion item, it allows a little bit more like conversation and probably also less paperwork. Okay.
So if it comes back to us at the November 1st meeting, we can just review the language and make sure that that's what we want to go to council for the 13th.
For the discussion item, yeah, and it'll probably end up going on the 27th now because the 13th just got really full, so.
Oh.
But it'll go the 27th, but that would just be a discussion item. But yeah, we can draft some language and bring it back for you at that meeting, just for you to kind of look at that, on those topics, so.
Let me see if anybody in the audience has anything to say.
I didn't mean to discourage anybody from the audience speaking.
Well, I got a little speech to make.
Well, let's have it, Bob. Sorry. I should have got you first earlier.
I just thank everybody here for the work they're doing. I was on this committee for 6 years, and I really, it kind of, the way the process works is if the administration and the council support this work, it really can be a benefit to the community. The work goes on, and if they don't, then a lot of times it's just frustrating. So all the people that come in here and try to help get some projects accomplished. And I think maybe now is a good time to, if that support's there. Just in all the other discussion we had, on the power front, I've got, all 3 of my kids moved to Cordova. My daughter works for Cordova Co-op. And they didn't have much choice since they're off the grid. They've got decent insets, these alternatives. But they're pretty far down this hydro road. They've got 2 projects they've been working on for a long time. And it's 70% of their summer hydro, which is really impressive. In the winter, it's just, all these hydro projects dry up to a large extent. The power needs are much lower too. Anyway, it's their power costs are just slightly higher than ours, and that's with a diesel backup that they have to use because they don't have a grid. If they didn't have that hydro, it would be double or triple what ours. It takes a long time to get a hydro project through, and people really have to be on it. I think it's kind of too bad that you guys is ahead of us on that South Fork of Light Creek. I've been up there a couple times, and that's just a no-brainer there.
I think they bought that way back when, we came up for discussion. Yeah.
But this Lowell Creek one's very doable, and the way they do theirs, their biggest one there in Power Creek, for always they have an inflatable dam that allows the rock to build up underneath it. The intake is above that, and when the rock, it has a large area it can fill up before they have to do something about it, and it doesn't bother the intake at all. Then when they have a big high water event, they just deflate it, and all that rock just gets right out. And that, to some extent, would be feasible up there. I just think it can't be done. The width of the creek that they're dealing with is about the same as the width of the creek here. And from what I've read, just the previous studies, it's like 25% of our power in the summertime. So it's worth it. And, all the other power things you talked about are good. The last thing I'd say is just about that airport project. It's the biggest disaster I've seen in this community in my whole life here. We're destroying the wetlands, spending $20 million to put a 1,000-foot shorter airport into the wetlands from end to end for $20 million. And that thing, this town just needs to help that die. The engineer that designed that left, she retired after the last public meeting here because the response by the public was so negative. And so she's gone, this thing is a zombie project, just stumbling forward. And the reason that we aren't repairing the old runway is because that engineer decided that we couldn't do the permitting to raise the level of it, to do the dike. We couldn't do the LOM and all the flood zone permitting, which we do constantly in this valley. Everywhere is behind the dike here. And the FAA won't build a longer airport if you're building a new airport from end to end. But that should have never been discussed. We need to repair our airport. And they still need the right-of-ways on the ends of the new runway. And I just would, I don't know what PACAB can do, but I definitely will support refusing to grant those. We had the preliminary right-of-way, but you told me there was going to be another meeting where the final right-of-way plat was approved.
Yeah, that won't come for a long time, so, yeah.
The longer that's delayed, the better. If that was to die, I'll bet we'd have that runway repaired as fast, just about as fast as it takes to build the new one. No wetlands. We have our 4,400-foot runway, 4,240, almost 1,000 feet longer. We land C-130s, we land commercial aircraft. It's not going to just build a complete new runway right through the bird pond, which is one of the coolest things there is down there. If it had to be done for a needed project, so be it. This is not. I wouldn't even brought that up, but I heard it. Other than that, I support the heat pump project.
Do we, I heard that I forget his name, is it Mike from Kenai, wants to bring commercial service in?
Aviation.
Yeah,
Yes.
and can he do that with the airport in the state of
Yes.
its current condition?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good, that's good.
He testified twice on those last meetings we had. So
Yeah.
we'd like to keep the current length of the runway.
Yeah, well, the DOT was all about, we're not about if we build it, they will come. So if they come before we build it, then it gives us, it's a little bit of a good thing for us.
Yeah, and I know that he talked with Kat, I was not in on that meeting, but I think that they were interested in getting some kind of small terminal infrastructure down there at some point in time, which we don't really have the ability to do that, it's not our land.
Right.
But that would be a beneficial thing, and I do think that with the Chugashmute Clinic going in, which will be kind of like the regional hub for, Chiniga, Titlik, Port Graham, Nanwalek, and Seldovia, we're going to see we will see, people like Smoky Bay Air coming
Right.
from that area. and
Increased
bringing
air
people up,
traffic,
and
yeah.
increased air traffic, which is only going to help us. The more wheels on the ground we get,
Right.
that's
Right.
a big deal.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
so anyway, I do think it's, it'll be great when we can get through all this and get it, because I do think they will be, they're coming. I know the military is also very interested in having a much larger and stable runway on that side, and so, yeah.
Well, I think to answer Bob's question, you know my position on this, and I can say that as long as I'm sitting in this chair, PACAB will keep an eye on that airport and do what we can. I'm being restrained not to suggest an eighth category that says, why do we think DOT is our friend? But I won't really go there. But you're absolutely right. The longer it goes before they actually break ground or construction, and the more activity that's shown, and the more justification for that, including anchoring Resurrection River from further excavating access. As long as, if they just pull the asphalt off and leave all the dirt there, we can come back to it, and that's their current plan. If they start excavating culverts or waterways through that 4,200 feet, it's a whole nother issue. Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing. I don't know how much you guys know about it, but Bob and I and others, Norm, I think you were at the meeting with FAA, they said, oh, well, check this out, forget it, forget what you got to say.
It's their way or no way.
That's it.
Pretty much it.
Okay, I think we've been fairly productive. I appreciate comments, Bob, and participation. Anybody, or Tony, or you're good?
Nope, I'm good, just want to get my feet back in the pool here.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Okay. I will add one thing in the comment. Let's just go, if nobody's got any other topics, we can just kind of close out the meeting. We just typically take a time for comments, so I just go around the table and.
I'll start with me, the newbie.
Well, no, that's everything you have to say is a benefit to us.
Well, I just want to thank you for having me. Looking forward to learning more about what this organization does and where I can contribute. Like I said, looking for ways to just bring some stability to Seward and keep these businesses in Seward that we need. That's my goal, so thank you again.
Yeah, I'm still kind of feeling like I'm just observing more than anything and, figuring it out. I was talking with my wife about something. She's been volunteering at the school a lot as far as like lodging and stuff goes here. A lot of these jobs that people aren't keeping are wintertime jobs, like teaching and stuff like that. And she started a pretty unofficial discussion, but, we have Miller's Landing, obviously, but she's got her own private 2 cabins out at Lost Lake. And she talked about something, figuring out the math behind it, but almost getting subsidized, where she didn't open up her cabins in May and didn't keep them open in September, where she basically, her season went from May till the end of September to being June till August, and the school kind of helping subsidize that, because we make 3 or 4 times as much doing nightly rental as we do monthly.
Right.
But if those 2 months were taken off and we knew we were going to be renting those other months, and we were kind of insured sort of or guaranteed by the schools or other places, and then it started a conversation about the bed tax in Seward and stuff, and subsidizing some of these things, because it's a lot of you still don't have a place to stay in the winter, but there's a lot of these jobs are wintertime jobs, like our ship lifts and stuff like that. They're cranking in the wintertime. The schools are cranking in the wintertime, I just thought that maybe there's something there, because it seems to be a big hobbling effect to everything anybody ever wants to do in Seward is the lodging. You just simply can't find people, and there's tons of jobs, there's tons of money, there's nowhere to live, but, and I know that from my standpoint, we used to, the standalone houses used to be the thing that rented first, but that's actually renting last now. People are kind of trending back towards hotels and stuff like that, because it's just how it seems to be evolving. So it might be a problem that sort of starts to fix itself too, but I don't know. That's worth waiting for.
Thank you.
But yeah, aside from that, I'm kind of still just watching.
Well, that's a lot, thank you. Linda?
I think the trending back towards hotels, I know last winter, Sweet Darlings, they ask everybody, they do them in the summertime too, but a lot of times in the summertime it's too busy. But in the wintertime, when people are coming into Sweet Darlings, it's a regular thing. They ask them, where are you from, where are you staying? And what they were discovering last year was that predominantly people were staying in hotels and not B&Bs, and that's a distinct shift. And I think part of that is with a hotel, you know what to expect. And with an Airbnb or a VRBO, you have an idea of what to expect, but then you really don't know till you get there. And it's really a crapshoot. And I think people are potentially starting to get burned out on that crapshoot. I know I am as an end user. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the coming years as those trends move. Thank you for coming today so that we could build this list. We did have, for those who are not aware, we did have a bit of a, Bruce touched on it, when, with the last chair that we had, because she didn't embrace some of the things in our, what I feel were our mission. And then there was something that happened, and all of a sudden, all the work session topics just disappeared off the calendar. In fact, all the dates actually disappeared off the calendar as well. And I don't know what happened there, but we have totally new administration now, so I'm really excited that we could maybe all get on the same page and become even more productive than we've been. I feel like we've been productive, but I think we could be more productive. And then I just want to address something. I know that a number of people in the community have heard me say I was going to get off PACAB because of my experience with the electric committee. I was pretty upset about what went on the committee, about what went on in the community, and there was a time where I was feeling like, you know, I just don't want to be involved. But I thought about it, and I actually enjoy this work, and I think this is important work, and I feel honored to be able to sit on this committee even though I don't live inside the city, and I know that there are people in the city that think that that shouldn't be. But I'm going to continue to do it for as long as it can remain pleasant. So thank you.
Okay. Norm,
So
Jason?
I just want to touch on something that Mr. Miller said, something about housing for like, so JAG is going to be building a big, huge complex for employee housing out there on Nash Road. So part of it's going to be in city limits, part of it's out of city limits, but that's a process that they're working on.
For just their employees or for employees in general?
Did they buy McDonald's property? That's not what you're talking about.
He's gonna, from what I've talked about, he's gonna start with his employees. He's
Yeah.
gonna make sure he has, you know, which,
He's all set with his employees, and then,
Well,
but he has the acreage to do more.
yeah.
Is this on the city property that he leases, or does he have his own property out there?
This is before you go up the hill. Before you go up the hill, left and right.
Well, that's good. That's encouraging news. That's what a lot of businesses in this town and everywhere else in the state of Alaska has had to do for employees,
Yeah.
which is different than our visitors and our tourists. And Linda and Tom talked a little bit about trends. That's something when we get it, if we do get into a housing discussion, I think we'll want to look and see some of those, understand some of those trends if we can. And you know, it's not always easy to project based on what you see today or even a trend, but it helps. It helps. A lot of times there's huge movements that happen to the community, like Seward. You know, when Carol and I got here, it was shortly after the earthquake, and you know, the motivation was just to get your feet back under you. Today we're blessed with a lot of other things. I spoke to council the other night, and I'll speak again about the importance, in my mind, of community service. It's not just to city boards or councils or groups or anything like that. You can run for election, you can volunteer your time, you can get all kinds of organizations in a community that need help. And I don't know if anybody, I don't know if we're recording this or not, but certainly nothing gets done if people don't want it done and put their time into it. Some people get paid for it, but most people that endure through a job do more than what they're paid for. You know, they have an interest and understand what their importance is, and I think we need to encourage people at every level to participate in our government, in our society, in our cultural events. There are national statistics that shows a lack of that. But it's not everywhere. It's not everywhere. And I think you can go to middle America and find that everybody's wearing 10 hats and participate in a lot of things. Seward has been that. We need to encourage that and value that from our elected officials here and our administration to each and every one of us. We need to encourage and appreciate each other. That's my 10 cents worth. If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.